Welcome, everyone. Thank you for fitting this into your schedule, this special meeting of the board to address the one item on the agenda. And I believe Tarek had a few opening comments on the matter.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Madam Chair, Deputy Chair, Commissioners. I'm here today with my team, Reid, Rob, and Jeff, to talk about the Burnside Operations Center. I think you probably all are very familiar with the topic, but just want to give a some quick background on the history and why are we here today. So this process, as you might be aware of already, it was started in 2014 when we decided to look at how do we merge 4 aging and undersized depots. The process really kicked in and got traction in 2020, and since then there was a lot of work thinking about the Janet Avenue and Burnside. Our hero here today, I think Rob and Sanjeev, were working around how we support the executive team and working around developing this concept. In the last 2 years, there has been a lot of meeting with our staff in all these depots to understand the culture as the future will be is one whole organization, and to understand how is that going to be a challenge from a logistics, commute, and all the kind of operation around people in these facilities there. The Burnside Operations Center will be the flagship for Halifax Water for the next probably 50 years, as it will be accommodating today's staff and future expansion to a certain point, where Reid will probably speak to that. And just to remind everyone, the board, and that 1 year ago, you approved the funding for Halifax Water to embark on the design validation, again, design validation process for what likely to be the first project in Atlantic Canada delivered under integrated project delivery. And I think Reid will probably explain that further today if there is no questions. And we are hoping to gain your approval to advance a detailed design and construction. So that was just my introduction, and back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Tarek. Any comment on a way forward? There's certainly a motion to be put on the floor. Do you want to present first, Reid?
Or I'll do whatever you or Heidi would like us to do.
Typically, the motion should be put on the floor first, and then the presentation comes to discussion.
Okay. I feel like the motion may get amended, but that's okay. Could somebody put the motion on the floor? Go ahead, Commissioner Cuddle.
Oh, okay, Heidi, go for it.
Yeah. Thank you. I move that Halifax Water Board approve additional funding in the amount of $86,335,000 for the remaining phases of the Burnside Operations Center project for an overall project cost of $89,100,000.
Second.
We'll have a second from Vice Chair Deagle-Gammon. We'll give the floor back to you, Reid.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. What we're going to do, well, I have Rob Gillis and Sanjeev Taggar with me. I think most of you have met Sanjeev, but Sanjeev is our Senior Manager of Strategic Projects, and Rob Gillis is our Manager of Structures and Special Projects. And Rob has been the person doing the bulk of all the good work we've done on this project for about the last 3 years or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just speak for a few minutes to some of the highlights in the report. And then Rob is going to give a presentation, about 15 slides or so, but it's going to give you a better flavor of what the building's going to look like, some of the features and things that we've gone through. So as we mentioned, we're seeking funding approval for funding to proceed with detailed design and construction of the Burnside Operations Center. And I'm sure you've all read the report. The construction cost is considerably higher than when we spoke to you about it a year ago. There's several reasons for that. One is just escalation in construction costs. Another issue is that the building is 14% larger, but we hope the report addresses, and I'm going to touch on some of these things. Those increases are all related to things such as code requirements, things we learned from staff about how the building needs to operate as we've gone through, and then a few strategic things we did related to stormwater management that aren't necessarily compulsory, but things we thought Halifax Water ought to do, or recommendations that we have included to build greater than we need right now, because now is the most economical time to build it. I just want to spend a brief minute going into a little bit of the history that Tarek mentioned. As he said, in 2014, we started this process. So this proposed building will replace 4 existing depots, a water depot in Sackville, a wastewater depot in Bedford, and distinct water and wastewater depots. Well, the water depot is in Woodside and the wastewater depot is in Cold Harbor. Of those, one of them has been sold to Nova Scotia Public Works for a highway right-of-way. One is currently over capacity, has no land, and would require significant renovation, even if we were to use it on its current location. One of those is totally inadequate, just from a variety of things. The staff are in trailers. We don't have good garage space. The land has lots of issues. And the best depot is 25 years old, and as a minimum would require upgrading if we were try to expand that for our purposes. So beginning in 2014, we did a couple studies. We have a strong business case for a single depot. We've done some analysis on travel time and those type of things. And we have secured a property in Burnside that is centrally located for the combined west and central regions. The building will house 4 groups from the 4 depots. And we'll be bringing in a couple of groups that are in temporary space at 450 Cowie and 455. And we also have space for some support things, because initially we will have 150 staff working there. So that merits some HR presence, some IT presence, and just space for other staff to support them that's going to work there. We've also discovered through the project, I'll credit Rob for raising this. We employed a change manager part-time on this project. We have 150 employees coming together. They're all going to have a new commute to work. They're all going to have new colleagues. They're all going to have a new culture in their depot. And the more we dug into this, this is turning out to be a very big thing. And I'm glad we've put the work into that. So we've done numerous meetings with staff. We've done surveys. We've done engagement sessions. So we've heard, particularly from managers and supervisors and senior staff, about what the building needs to work well. And, you know, right down from frontline staff up to supervisors and superintendents, all the staff's concerns have been heard and incorporated in the design as best we could. And through the integrated project delivery process, we're very confident that the building will function well mechanically, operationally, and culturally. So getting to the cost, at this point, we're very confident due to the IPD process that the building's optimized, will be functional, and it will be built for the cost that's suggested in the report. We're not anticipating changes in the scope as we go through construction. I want to talk about the IPD process for a minute. We have just come through the design validation process, and what that means is the building has been designed sufficiently with Halifax Water at the table that the contractor is prepared to build the building that we want for the cost that is suggested. We do not need to go to tender, and once we get approvals, our contractor is engaged and ready to go. So in the IPD process, as I said, we've been engaged all along in the process, including at various points some executive staff. We've validated the price that the contracting team has done by a third-party estimating quantity surveying company, and they've validated that the cost that we have is appropriate. The construction cost consists of the actual cost to build the building, plus a profit pool that the contractor will receive if they build the contract on schedule. All along the way, as the contractor is progressing, they will be paid only their costs. So the building will be built for what it actually costs to build the building. The contractor is highly incented to reduce the cost of the building well, to bring it in on budget, but also to reduce the cost of the building. And the way that works is in two instances. If the contractor comes up with a way to save money on the building, so let's say they figure out a way to save $100,000, we would agree to do that presumably, and then that $100,000 would be split between Halifax Water and the contractor. If the contractor is unable to build the building for the cost specified, they do not get any money from Halifax Water until they have spent all the money that's set aside for their profit. So the contractor would end up getting zero profit on this after working for 3 years if they don't bring the project in on budget. And so the contract, unlike conventional construction, I'm going to use a small example. Let's suppose our architect in conventional construction specified a window, and it happened to be a non-standard size window. And the contractor realizes after the tender's closed, well, I can save my client some money, because if the client's willing to go to a standard size window, presumably if there's some savings for us, we'd accept that. But the contractor has all the cards. So we don't know how much, if any, of the savings are really being passed on to us. In IPD, the contractor is incented to get the costs down. Everything we pay the contractor is transparent and auditable, and they will only get paid what they spend. But they are incented to find ways to save money in that fashion by putting in a standard window, because we will share the savings with them at the end. The report also details how the building is larger. There are changes related to code. There are changes coming out of the engagement with staff, such as more space for the single gender washrooms with private shower facilities, cleanup space, that type of thing. There are also several things that we are recommending to include now, because now is the time that we can build it least expensively. And that includes squaring up the upper floor to be consistent with the lower floor by building that space now, adding an extra bay, adding a facility in the yard, which would replace, for our jet trucks, they dispose of the material they collect at Aerotech that takes them out of service for a long time. To drive out there, we're proposing to include a facility at this location that would economize that travel. And finally, some covered vehicle parking on site for certain vehicles that are important to keep out of the snow and ice. But there's many more than that. The report details them. I'm going to stop talking there and turn it over to Rob. But maybe Rob, before you go, Madam Chair, would you like questions on that now, or do you want to hear from Rob first?
I think we should hear from Rob. We can hold our pile of questions to the end.
Okay, very good.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Jake, yeah, thank you. So if we go to the next slide. So we're going to present today, Madam Chair and Councillors, is the agenda. So we'll go over the location. We'll talk about the engagement that Tarek and Reed both referred to. We'll show you a rendering right now of what the building is going to look like. We'll talk about those program areas and the floor plans that have been extensively developed based on feedback from staff. We'll do a site fly-through, a 3D fly-through of the site, because the site became one of the overwhelming levels of important or factors in the design of the building was the site availability and where we can store equipment and how we can drive in and off the site. And then we'll give you a little bit about a schedule, and then we'll turn it back over to questions. So as Reed indicated, we are currently servicing the water distribution, wastewater, and stormwater collection services via 5 depots right now. So number 5 at the bottom of the page there is already a combined depot at 455, where they have the water, wastewater, and stormwater services. And what we're doing here is we're bringing the east and central regions, so the Bedford, Sackville, and the Dartmouth and Cole Harbour depots into a single combined depot. So bringing those 4 work groups in, as well as the technical services group that are housed at Park Avenue, into one depot and a location that's serviceable to both areas, the central and the east areas. Next slide. So this is a high-level view of the location. So we're in the blue rectangle. That's where our site is. As you can see, we have easy access to the major access routes: the 107, the 118, and the 111. We are in a central location there to service both the east and central regions. The highway in yellow is the new highway being constructed by the province. That's going to be a connector highway between Burnside and Bedford. That will be constructed in 2024. So in time when we move into the building in 2026, that highway will be already under construction or already completed. And you should also note that that is the same route that we're having for a right-of-way for the Bedford Burnside connector pipe that's going to connect both the connect the Lake Major water distribution system with the Pockwalk water distribution system along that same route. Next slide. Now, if we zoom in a little bit closer on our map, this is our site. So we're at the very top, not the very top, but very close to the top at Burnside. It's just off of Jeanette Avenue. There's Wilkinson Avenue that you can see there, and that travels and connects into Wright Avenue. The site to our left, our right of our property is going to be Midland Transportation, so that'll be a transportation hub. Many of the other services around our site are light industrial, similar transportation hubs, sign companies, repair shops type thing. So we're in a very suitable location for this type of work that we're doing, as well as the work around us. Next slide. So as Reed and Tarek said, we've been working on this project since 2020, along with the engagement sessions. So we've done a number of engagement sessions with our staff. We've been meeting with all the depots that are moving in together, as well as the combined depot, to learn from them. This is a change in culture. It's going to be a change in business practices. We've done multiple visits with all the staff to go over the changes, to get feedback on them, to talk about the things that we could incorporate and the things that we couldn't, that they asked for, and the reasons why, to really get that buy-in on what's happening and keep them engaged, and get them excited about this process. Not everyone is super excited about the change, but we are working through it with our change manager and to try to bring them along and get there for 2026. Next slide. So an output of those engagement sessions, we had a concept design plan that was prepared by East Point. So we used that as part of our RFP to procure an IPD team. This is a level of engagement that we started off and kicked off with where we had our IPD team, which consists of Bird Chando's joint venture, Atlantic Mechanicals, which are electrical and mechanical contractors, and Life Safety Systems. We had CBCL, which are mechanical, electrical, site and civil designers. We have FBM and Group 2, which are our interior and exterior architecture firms, as well as Halifax Water staff, that all met to kick off here. And this would be an example of what we'd call a big room activity, where everybody's at the table all at once talking about this project and try to get it in schedule, scope, and quality expectations. Next slide. So after the kickoff, then we continue with our big room activities, and this is an example of where we've brought in the managers of each of the depots and the supervisors of each of the depots, and really fine-tuned and refined the concept designs to really figure out exactly what we need, work on different options, see what they like, see what they didn't like, see what's preferred to get to the point that we are today. So again, engagement with the staff, and all around the table we have cost estimators, we have the contractors, and we have the consultants and the architects all at the same time, giving their input to really bring value to this project. Next slide. So here's an architectural rendering of what the building looks like at this stage, or will look like at this stage. Next slide. So this is the program area for the level 1. So basically the floor plan. This is the mainly operational area of the building. This is as Reed said, a lot of engagement on this floor with operations to make sure that it flowed correctly. Like what happens when they come in at the start of the day, and what do they do? Where do they go? Who do they see? What do they do at the end of the day? What's their flow through the building, and really refine this process. And this perimeter of the first floor is really dictating the footprint of the building. Next slide. This is the proposed level 2 floor plan. Again, currently it's right now we believe it's a little bit it's a little bit smaller than the first floor. We plan to move in 150 plus people initially, with expansion capabilities up to 200. However, like Reed said, we have opportunities here that we can extend the second floor perimeter out over the first floor area to match it. That'll give us much more expansion capabilities. As our service area and population of Halifax grows, we can grow with it when the time is needed. And so we're looking at growth over the bottom part of your screen, over that first floor area, and expanding our vacant space. And then also on the top part of the screen, there's a little jut out over the lunchroom below where we could accommodate, and we're recommending that we do this now because it'll be at the least cost. Next slide. This is our warehouse / bay area of the building. This is a 2-story area, so we incorporated stores. We have workshops for specialty work. We have a shared tool crib where we can share tools amongst all the groups. And we've refined the size of the building in the back for parking, and we've only included those vehicles that absolutely need to be parked inside. So of the 136 plus vehicles that are going to be moving over into this facility, we've narrowed it down to just these numbers of vehicles that are going to be parked inside. And as Reed said, the additional request too for extra additional spending is to add another bay into this bay area or shop bays now, because it's going to be the least cost and prepared for the future. And we've also incorporated a maintenance bay in here, so we'll have maintenance technicians that are capable of servicing, the 2/3 of the vehicles that we do have in our fleet at this facility. Next slide. So this is going to be a video fly-through of the site as proposed and the design, and that's been a collaborated process of having our managers and supervisors review the site, review the building, find out what they like, what they don't, what they need to successfully move into this building and operate it for the next 50 plus years. So Jake, if you want to press play. I don't hear any music, Jake, but there is music going with this. More elevator music, if you can imagine that as you drive through here.
I need the music.
It's a matter of taste.
Yeah. So the green and red arrows is our.
Sing, Rob.
What's that? I have to sing. You haven't heard my voice. We just passed a shared fuel station with HRM. Come through our main gate, parking here on the left-hand side for all our vehicles. We have some storage sea cans, some lay-down areas, some waste bins. Coming through a snow clearing area where we lay some bulk materials, a coal patch storage building, some other lay-down areas for equipment and storage. The gray buildings are a dewatering building that Reed was talking about, some waste bins and more storage areas. We'll have a communications tower here, cold storage building that's not for cold equipment. We have the potential for covered parking, so this covered parking would be one of the areas that we would like to do now versus later. Some waste oil, our second gates. We have 2 in and out routes completely for our Halifax Water vehicles. That's exterior of our lunchroom. And then we have over 200 parking spaces for our Halifax Water staff for present and the future. with the 3 access driveways, we have 3 in and out routes for our personal vehicles. Main entry, bicycle parking. Another main entrance on the side. And the roof, we are filling the roof with solar PV panels. Currently in the entry, or the target cost is a 475 kilowatt system of solar PV. It's going to align us well with Halifax Act 2050, and it's also, if we do the expansions over the roof on the 2nd floor, then that'll also add additional PV on there that will get close to potentially be a net zero, which will be evaluated once we move forward into the design. Next slide. So this is our present schedule. So we completed the design validation just in September. We've started on our interim detailed design and procurement phase, which we received funding for on the last, as part of the design validation funding. Today, we are seeking the approval of the remaining funding to complete this project. And once that happens, then we will move forward. Once that, if and that happens, we'll move forward to a URB approval. We hope to have URB approval by March of 2024. And then if that happens, we'll be able to get shovels in the ground in July of 2024. And then if that happens, we'll be able to meet occupancy. So we'll be able to move all 4 depots into the new facility in July of 2026. And part of this project is a 2-year warranty as well. So the warranty will be complete in 2028 for the facility. And then we've come to the end of the presentation. So if there's any questions for me, please.
Hey, Rob. And does Sanjeev have any presentation?
Oh, we're good.
I'm good.
No? Okay. Okay, and Commissioner Cuddle has a question just before we head there. We did start a bit late. Cognizant of time, who has a hard stop at 3? Costi does?
Yeah, I do too.
You do too? Okay. Anyone who wants to speak, please identify it in the chat, and we'll start with Commissioner Cuddle.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Wow, this is quite the project and so many questions. So I will try to keep them tight. I think you answered my one question about the expansion, and I was wondering if that was in relation to the anticipated growth of Halifax that's being projected. And I believe at some point in the presentation you said, yes, it was the growing to 1 million people. So and my question was, is this facility being planned, given that it was started kind of before those projections were made, and now we have these projections, you know, is it being planned to accommodate that type of growth within the municipality? Also, you talked about stormwater. I think, Reed, I think you mentioned something about doing some stormwater management on site because you thought it was something that Halifax Water could do. And I'm just really interested in knowing a little bit more about what that is. And really interesting financial arrangement here with the contractor. I think you called it IPD.
Yes.
And you know, when you change out the windows, I mean, you can really alter the design of a building. I mean, you could actually eliminate a window altogether if you don't need it for egress. So just, you know, when these changes are made, I guess they must go through a design review panel, because you know, we don't want the building to look terrible and put in sliding, you know, basement windows in place of those nice big windows that let light into the offices. So I'm just wondering what the process is beyond the financial piece. You know, how do you look at those changes in regards to the design to ensure that we have, you know, a healthy building? And that engagement process was great. You know, the big room brainstorming, that's really, really positive to see. I think we need some more of that all over HRM. And my final question is about EV chargers, and I might have been typing notes about this while this was mentioned, but I'm just wondering, are EV chargers going to be on site with to accommodate future electric fleet vehicles, but also for employees. My research into EV chargers lately has shown that one of the best ways to support EV vehicles is in the workplace, where employees are parked for 8 hours a day and they can actually, trickle charge their cars. So if someone, sorry for the barrage of questions, but if someone can answer those, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, maybe I'll start on a couple, Commissioner Cuddle, and also I'm going to apologize. I've got these Bluetooth headphones in and somebody tried to call me. So until I canceled that, I didn't hear a little bit about your, but I believe you were talking about Halifax at the beginning. Is that correct?
No.
You just asked if it was size, if the size was for the growth that for Halifax to get to 1 million people.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I got that, yes, okay. Yeah, I'll just say a couple things. Yeah, so on move-in, we're anticipating 150 people. And the building as it's designed now will have room for 200. And then we haven't really, it depends on the design and the layout. But I don't know, Sanjeev or Rob, did you make an estimate? If we were to build those build-out things we're recommending, we could probably get another 50, 75 people in that. It's a little bit hard for us to predict how many people we're going to need at 1.2 million. Honestly, that's a new number for us and we haven't got to process it. But I would say at its ultimate build out, we need 150 people now. We're probably good for, close to 300 people in this building. Is that fair, Rob and Sanjeev?
That's fair, Reed. We were estimating between 50 and 60 additional people if we do the expansion on the second floor now. So that pushes that to 250, 260. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and I will say on the stormwater, yeah, they are features to allow us to retain stormwater on site. Rob can speak a little bit to what those features actually are. They're not required by any legislation, but we thought where in our rate mechanisms, if people were developing a lot and they want to reduce the stormwater charges that we're going to pay them, one mechanism is to put these on-site stormwater facilities on their property. And of course, we want to be encouraging people to retain stormwater on site and not have those peak loads coming in the system. So we felt really we need to be leaders in that. So we would include those features in the building. And Rob, would you like to speak to what those are? Maybe Rob, just before that, I'll say, and Rob can give you the details as well, but we've wired up the property for a significant number of EV chargers, but initially we're going to have a small number to start out in the building. So go ahead, Rob, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Reed. And
sorry, just to cut in. I'm really cognizant of time, especially if Patty has to run away.
Yeah, I just pushed my 3:30 meeting till 4, so I have a bit
thank
of
you.
time now.
I'm worried about time. Does that give you enough information that we're planning for stormwater retention and there's details in the report? Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm going to cut you off on elaborating on it. Is it okay, Rob?
That's okay, Madam Chair.
Okay. If not, we'll come back to stormwater retention. Commissioner Deagle-Gammon.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll be quick. I'm really interested in this IPD process. It's really interesting. It puts so much onus, though, on all of that front end work. So if the front end work isn't done exactly the way you need, you come up with it on the other end. So I'm just wondering, Reed, when you were speaking that if there is a change and there's like a savings of 100,000, 50 to Halifax Water, 50 to the contractor, is there a way that, let's say, something wasn't thought of? And so in the old world of costing, it would be like a cost overrun.
Yes.
Is there a way then that if you miss something, those funds then can go to a cost overrun that might have been missed?
Yeah.
So that's just a little question about that, because when I read through this now, I was like looking at this model of costing. I was like, well, what happens if we didn't think of something? Where does that kind of fit in? And just curiosity and a compliment. Thank you for the accessibility. Really well done. Love seeing the Rick Hansen stuff in there. And the desire to build for accessibility and for a future workforce. That's really quite nicely outlined in it. So I really like that. But yeah, so I guess those are the two big things. And it looks like it's concrete tilt up.
No, it's insulated steel panels.
Oh, okay. I didn't see
And
that. I must have missed that when I was reading. My apologies. Just when
yeah,
I saw the visual, it almost looked like concrete tilt up. So yeah, thanks.
yeah, and you know, I'm glad you raised that, Commissioner, because that is something that Rob was very much involved in. I mean, notionally, tilt up should be less expensive, easier to
Yeah,
put up. And we
right.
see a lot of tilt up buildings around there. With the team, they spent a lot of time going through insulated steel panels versus tilt up. And at the end of the day, we found out much better insulative value, much more attractive architecturally, but about that much more cost. So we decided to essentially a tie on the cost when you can, and that was the value of the IDPD process. That's a good segue because we had the designers and the constructors and the owners all around the table talking about it. So all the views came in. So on talking about cost overruns, and you're right, that initial process is important. However, in conventional construction, that initial process is Halifax Water working with their architect. The
Yes.
architect does plans, and the plans go on the street. The architect does not necessarily know whether that's buildable economically. I mean, they've got a sense, but not as well as the contractor did. So in this case, the contractor, the subtrades, the architects and the engineers and the owner are all sitting around the table talking these things through. And so, first of all, we anticipate much less of those things where the windows don't fit. There's a pipe going through a heating duct, and we have to change it. And so when you have less, we're going to have less of these change order proposals from a contractor. And once the contract's closed, it's no longer a competitive process for the contractor to give you a price. But in the event that there were cost overruns, Halifax Water, has, like any construction project, has ultimate cost responsibility.
Okay.
But if those cost changes bring you above the contractor's cost to build it, his first funding source for it is his profit pool.
Okay.
So Halifax Water does not pay anything for extras until the contractor gets to the point where he has zero profit. So the contractor's highly incented to work these things out in advance to make sure we don't have those negative cost changes.
Great. Thank you for that. It's a great answer.
Thank you. And Commissioner Cuddle noted we didn't answer one of her questions. Read the example being the contractor brings forward a cost saving.
Yes.
She was interested in the decision process on whether you decide to go forward with it.
Yeah, and I think it's part of the same answer. So apologies, Commissioner Cuddle. I was scrambling to write those down. But once again, as we did in the process, Halifax Water is always part of those discussions along the way, as are the architect. And once again, compared to conventional construction, the contractor, the architect, the subtrades, and the owner are all on the same team. Where in conventional construction, when those things arise, it's an adversarial process because the contract's already been left. And so it would go through a similar design review, but in a much more collaborative process than conventional construction.
It's not just all about cost savings. There's a design component consideration.
Right. And those changes are up to Halifax Water ultimately to accept or pass on.
Reed, it sounds like it's an elevated process from a design bid build.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is the first one in Atlantic Canada, certainly the first one for us. And I had somebody I know in the industry say everybody's always most excited about the delivery process they haven't tried yet, but we'll learn a lot from this. But so far, and Rob can speak to this, it's been very positive, and that's why we're confident the building is going to suit its purpose. We can say that with much more confidence than we would have before.
Right.
Any questions, Kostya? No? Any questions, Peter? No? Okay, my question is around money. So the motion refers to 89,100,000. And yet if I go to page 19, you show a number of 94 million, and so I'm kind of surprised the motion is not for 94 million. Can somebody explain?
Yes, the difference is in the cost of the land. We wanted to be transparent to that. I think there's a couple rationales. I think one is when we came back last year, and I don't know if it was, I'm presuming it was an oversight. We were talking to you about the cost of building the building, and the land cost was left out of the calculation. We acknowledged in the report that we had bought a property for about $5 million 2 years before. So we did want you to be conscious of the whole cost, which includes the land. But then again, the land's an asset that if for some reason this project wasn't to go forward, we can probably dispose of the land and probably for more than $5 million. So yes, the difference between those two numbers is the cost of the land we purchased in 2020.
Any comment then if you'll be going to the utility review board indicating that the total cost to build this will be 89 million or really 94 million?
Yeah, no, we'll be transparent on that and include the land cost in the whole thing. We'll make sure it's plain to them.
Okay, so is it better for you to have a motion regarding the 94 million?
Here, I think from the perspective of the purposes of the motion, I will say that I think the motion as it stands is accurate and is appropriate. As Reed has indicated, the intention of including the cost of the land was to be transparent. This project, as far as the utility and review board is concerned, is about the construction of the depot. The utility and review board already reviewed and approved the purchase of the land as a separate project. And so this is a net new project for the utility and review board. But to Reed's point, we absolutely will, when we go to the utility and review board, provide the fullness of, don't forget, you also approved the land purchase, and that forms part of this if you'd like it to, and we'll be transparent in that fashion. And I would say as well that the board has also already approved, this board has also already approved the purchase of that land at the amount.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have a comment on that? Are we okay still with the motion? Yes. Okay, so my question, so number one, fantastic work. Thank you. Phenomenal report and context for all of it. Very surprised when I saw the new number, but absolutely understand why we got to that number. Can we have a conversation about reputational risk and cost to our ratepayers? As we know, other utilities have recently gone through building similar facilities, and obviously it's often been in the media. So there was some discussion about sort of where this fits. I understand why we're building it and I understand the cost, but any strategy on reputational risk and where it will fit in for our ratepayers and the affordability of our services.
Okay, so I'm not sure, Colleen, if you want me to talk about risk, or if Heidi or Tarek or somebody. Louis is certainly prepared to talk about the cost and how this gets financed and rate impact.
Let's start with Louis.
Easy answer, it will be part of our budgets going forward. The budget or the cost will hit our rates when the building is complete. So at this stage, it would be impacting our rates in 26, 27 or so. When we look, the way it gets into our rates is when the building is put into service. It becomes part of our depreciation calculation, which is our estimate is about $1.8 to $3.6 million, depending on how the components work. $1.8 million increase in our cost translates to about 6% and on the or 6 cents on the consumption rate. 3.6 million would represent about 11 cents on our consumption rate. So it's not insignificant, but it is part of the overall strategy that we will be going forward as we increase rates to fund the significant increase in capital expenditures.
And it would be fair to say there would be some of that 6 to 11 cents would also be incurred to keep the existing facilities in place. So it's not a straight increase, right?
So that in the case of the buildings that we have now, I haven't gone through and pulled out if we're leasing buildings or if we are maintaining buildings. This is all about the incremental cost related to the capital expenditure that's in front of you. So this is just how the capital impact affects the rates.
I will add, Madam Chair, that as was noted in the report that was provided to you, the four facilities that are effectively going to be combined to create this facility, they are either at their end of life or beyond capacity or simply will not exist in a short period of time. And so to your point, if the board were to decide to not move forward with this motion or to not approve this motion, it doesn't mean that this cost goes away. There would be other costs associated with either bringing those facilities up to what they need to be or relocating them altogether. And that's a very high level overview, but I think I got the impression that you were looking for a little bit more on that one.
I think I assumed that was the answer, but so I think I'm with you because it was explained well in the report that the existing facilities would incur cost or else no longer be functional. So okay, so it's probably a Tarek question. Any discussion on reputational risk?
Madam Chair, this is Tarek here. I just wanted to say, I think you raise a good point. If the board agrees to proceed with this project, we will develop a communication plan and news release that puts this in context, so it doesn't look like we're throwing money on something like this. This is important to us, but there will be a communication plan, including a news release and explaining why are we doing this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, we're up against 3 o'clock and we don't want to lose cost here before we take the vote because we'll lose quorum. Any final questions before we call the vote? Okay, so a reminder, the motion on the floor is that the Halifax Water Board approve additional funding in the amount of $86,335,000 for the remaining phases of the Burnside Operations Center project for an overall project cost of $89,100,000. We will call for the vote. All in favor of this motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. This was a very important consideration, and thank you to all the staff. That was a very thorough report and was very helpful in helping us move this motion forward. I believe that's the only item we had. So motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Kettle. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.